Hello, welcome back to Hoops Crush, episode number 12. Today, as always, I'm joined with Eric, and we got quite a bit to talk about today. Of course, the last time we talked to you guys, it was ahead of the matchup of Scoot versus Wemby. A trade has gone down since we last talked as well, and there was a report today about Darvin Ham and the Lakers. There's quite a bit I want to get into today with you, Eric, but before we go any further, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. How about yourself? Did you have a
Uh,
good New Year's? Do anything special?
Yeah, didn't really do too much. My New Year was whatever. Just kind of these three holidays, I just didn't do anything too crazy. But hopefully next year will be better for me. But how about you?
Yeah, I had a pretty lame one. Just waited till midnight with the family, and then went right to bed because I had to work at 6 a.m. on New Year's. So yeah, wasn't
That's
really out doing anything too crazy either.
Yeah, that's pretty much all I did too. Was just go to bed as soon as I hit 12. I was like, oh yeah, 2024. So this is our first episode of 2024, and of course, the last time we did talk, as I mentioned, we were about to play the Spurs in back-to-back games, where they beat us in the first one, but unfortunately, and then we beat them in the second one, when Wemby rests. So obviously, Wembanyama had a huge impact on the first game. 30 points on her head. He played really good tonight as well against the Milwaukee Bucks. But the bright side of things here is obviously Scoot got to play a lot in these two games, and he looked really good in both of them, which obviously led us to a win in the second one, where his passing looked just absolutely phenomenal in the second one. What was your take on these two games against the San Antonio Spurs to start things off here?
Well, obviously, really disappointed in the first one. Just got down by a lot, and I mean, that'll be a theme outside of the second game. Unfortunately, these last four that we've played since our last episode have not gone great outside of the second one. But yeah, really happy to see Scoot not only have a good game or another good game, but just some of the passes he made in these two games in particular were just really promising. And I thought he was doing a much better job, especially in the second one, of setting up the offense and running like a true point guard should play. And yeah, some of the passes he made in traffic and stuff, just really impressive stuff.
Yeah, I absolutely love seeing, just the development of Scoop because obviously, the beginning things were a little rough, but I feel like as of lately, it's been a lot better. We've had so many injuries with guards. Simon sat out a couple games. Sharp obviously missed some time. But as you mentioned, we go to the next two games against the Phoenix Suns and the Dallas Mavericks. I literally don't remember a single thing about the Suns game, and it's probably a good thing because it was didn't go very well at all. But obviously, also the Mavericks game, I was watching it, and as I was watching it, I was like, you know what? I just decided to go do chores around the house instead. I had it on as background noise, so just an
Do not
absolute,
blame you.
yeah. It was just both games just not very good to watch, unfortunately, and that's just it sucks, but that's just kind of the theme of these other two games and how they were, unfortunately.
Yeah, that was the good part about most of the season. I mean, early on we got blown out by I think 43 or something to the Thunder. But for the most part, even if we got down, we clawed our way back and made it at least interesting in most of the games. There are of course a few blowouts, but um for three of the last four games to just be complete blowout no shows by most of the team and just seemingly, I don't know, it's just frustrating because like the veterans don't seem like they're into it anymore. The effort levels that were really good and keeping us in games earlier in the season seem to be waning a little bit, and some of the players seem to just be going through the motions at this point. And it could just be, yeah, players in and out of the lineup. They haven't had a lot of time playing with each other. Chauncey said in one of the post game conferences recently that there hasn't been a lot of practice time. So maybe it's just a combination of all those things. But just really disappointed with some of the effort levels in the past few games.
And unfortunately, we get to go head to Dallas again tomorrow.
Yeah.
I had the audacity to pick the Blazers and picks against the spread, thinking we would make it a close game, and boy was I wrong. Luka once again that guy is just on a whole nother level this season. By the way, Kyrie Irving also returns for the Mavericks. I don't know if he played a game before that. This was his return, right?
I
Or did he
think
play
he
another game?
played in Utah or something
Oh,
the game
okay.
before ours. Yeah.
Yeah, Luka drops 41. Kyrie has 29, and Derek Lively did leave this game very early for the Mavericks though in the second half. So hopefully he'll be all right. I'm not sure if he's
It's questionable for the next game.
okay.
So yeah.
So yeah, then we play Dallas again. Then we head to Brooklyn, whose intent is to keep building around Mikal Bridges. So that's an interesting quote that came from Woj. And then we get to play the Knicks after that, who obviously just made a trade, for OG Anunoby, which we will talk about here. But is there anything you want to add about our beloved Blazers? I don't really have too much to say about them today because it's just been disappointing.
I was really high on Ibubaji coming in the draft, so it was nice to see him play. Um, on Blazers Uprise, we had a ton of people last year always saying they need to play Ibubaji, they need to play him. And as big of a fan of his as I am, I didn't think he was ready to play at all last year, and then he didn't really look too good in summer league either, to the point where the Blazers didn't bring him back on a two-way, and then it works out for them to do so after promoting Skylar Mays to the actual roster. So it's nice to see him not only get in some NBA games because he didn't play a single minute last year, um, but to actually like do some positive things on the court. I thought he did a really good job of setting some screens, and you can tell that if he can figure some stuff out, like not how to not foul as much and how to go vertical sometimes, or one of the toughest things for a young player is knowing when to block a shot or go for a block versus just staying and making it a difficult shot and just putting your arms up as high as you can with that long wingspan and just affecting shots without getting necessarily credited for a block. And so I think he's got a little bit of a learning curve still with that. But you can tell there's a skill set in there that could be useful as kind of a lob threat big slash defensive center. And it's interesting because we haven't really had a lot of those guys in Portland. So it'd be fun to see him develop. But I don't know. He's still a really raw player and still has a long ways to go.
So are you higher on Duop Reith or Ibubaji then?
Well, Baji's a lot younger, like 6 or
That's
7
true.
years younger. So um yeah, I Reith has been good. I don't mind Reith. I don't know if he's like necessarily the long-term answer backup center or whatever. Um, I do like his spacing of the floor. I think that was key in opening up a lot of shots and getting Scoot going. I feel like Reith and Walker have a good combo thing going. Um, and I feel like they play well together. But Reed's been okay on defense, better than I thought he would be. He's just not that like imposing, quick, athletic, uh, lengthy front court player that we kind of need in that position with our guard lineups. And so maybe that changes our needs eventually if we make moves and don't have Scoot Sharp and Anthony on the same roster. But as long as we do, I feel like we need like offense is nice, but it's more of a luxury with Reith versus someone like Baji who could eventually be maybe like a Clint Capella type of defensive specialist. Um, I just think I'm not saying Baji will turn into that, but that's the kind of archetype we need to try and develop versus necessarily a big that's not great defensively but can play offense. I think we have enough scoring on the team, despite how bad our offense has been. I think eventually, if everyone maxes out to their or close to their ceilings, I don't think we need necessarily an offensive only big.
Yeah, absolutely. If Baji could become that, that'd be absolutely amazing. But we got a rare December trade in December, which is something we don't often get. OG Anunoby is sent to the New York Knicks for obviously. So it was OG Anunoby going to the Knicks. You have also Chua and Malachi Flynn going over, and RJ made it quickly in a Detroit second round pick, which is probably going to be the 31st pick. To the Raptors. So I kind of gave my thoughts on Twitter about the trade, but I haven't really been able to talk to you on how you felt about the trade and how you liked it for either side, and then we could just kind of talk about it because talking about trades is something I love to talk about. So, what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I had a lot of thoughts going through my head when I saw the trade. One of the first things that popped into my mind was, is did Vasai do okay by waiting to trade OG, or did he give up a ton of value? Um, we saw that with Daryl Morey in Ben Simmons. It seemed like the longer he waited, the worse offers he was going to get for Ben Simmons. And then all of a sudden, like Harden becomes available, and it turns into like this perfect situation. Um, and I think I after that, just like thinking about that, like should they have taken multiple firsts instead, or is quickly that good? Um, then my thoughts turn to New York. I feel like this is a huge upgrade for them, but at the same time, like I'm also not wanting to pay OG and Max, which might be what they have to do this summer. So I'm a little torn on whether they should have even gone for OG, and it's going to kind of mess with their cap situation moving forward if they keep him. And if you lose him for nothing, that also isn't good. It looks like all indications are that they have some sort of understanding that he'll be back after this year. But uh, yeah, so I like it for the Knicks, and I know quickly wasn't like a huge part of their team considering how much Brunson has the ball and all that. Um, but like I also really like this for the Raptors. I think Quickly's one of those guards that they've needed for a really long time. Can shoot off the dribble or catch and shoot. Um, and they haven't really had a dynamic guard like that for a while since. I mean, Van Vliet was okay in that regard, but Quickly is well, no pun intended, quick. um, and they haven't really had like a speedy guard that can shoot and create shots and stuff like that. So it's been kind of fun watching them. Where it hasn't really been enjoyable to watch them a lot in the past when you have a bunch of players that can't shoot. I mean, some of them can create and stuff, but when the spacing's bad, it doesn't really amount to a whole lot of wins. So I think Quickly is a really good addition for Toronto. And I think when all the dust settles after this long-winded answer about this whole trade, I think Toronto's going to feel like they won this trade when Quickly uh, looks like the best player that was moved here and they got additional assets. So as good as OG is, I think Toronto's going to be very thankful that they made this trade and have Quickly on their team.
Yeah, so I was just shocked to see OG and the Raptors finally make it. Well, not OG necessarily, but the Raptors make the trade. I was like, man, they actually finally are, going through with what they should be doing. It
Made a
took
trade.
took a while for them to commit to something, but after allowing this trade to digest a little bit, I absolutely loved it for the Toronto Raptors. Of course, as you mentioned, they maybe could have gotten 3 or 4 firsts that were rumored at times about that was offered for OG Anunoby. But getting him in quickly, and also even RJ, who obviously RJ has his problems. He's an okay player, but he's still, on the same timeline along with Quickly and Scotty Barnes. So I loved that. And then getting the 31st pick in the draft, most likely, also really nice for Toronto. So I absolutely love this trade for Toronto. As far as the Knicks are concerned, I do wonder, like, obviously OG is going to resign because of the connection between his agent and his, obviously, Leon Rose or whatever being his father. But I do wonder how much this, makes them better as far as competing in the Eastern Conference with the top dogs. And I know they're still going to be big fish hunting, but it definitely concerns me if their package is going to be as attractive anymore for, like, per se, Donovan Mitchell, if he was available, or whoever it may be. Like, does, Evan Fournier's salary and Quentin Grimes and Detroit, I think they have Detroit's protected pick or something like that. Like, I don't know if that's going to be the best package on the table when guys become available anymore. Having RJ and Emmanuel quickly, I think, could have, like, boosted their package a little bit, which is why I am concerned on what the Knicks moves will be going forward. I feel like OG is going to resign just because of that connection alone, and I'm sure the Knicks felt like they had that, in their back pockets. Like, that's almost guaranteed he's going to resign, and he wanted to be in New York, it sounds like. So Toronto absolutely loved the trade. They'll have to resign him in quickly, obviously, but they needed to kind of a point guard going forward anyway for the long term. Of course, they have Dennis Schroeder, who's been okay this season for them, but quickly is a guy that fits perfectly next to Scotty Barnes for the future. Which is a guy who's been waiting to break out in a lot of people's minds, and obviously playing behind Jalen Brunson, that maybe never is going to happen. But now he has the keys in Toronto at that point guard spot, and I think Toronto did pretty good. I think they get a guy, and if RJ never becomes anything, he'll always just be an okay player. But Scott or Amanda Quickly, that's just such a great addition in my opinion for Toronto that. I think they did good. I think Jerry did really good in this trade. So, shout out to the Raptors. But do you think the Knicks have what it takes to go out there and get somebody with the assets they have left, or do you think they made a mistake by going in on OG?
I still think they have the assets because they have a Dallas pick this year. They have the Detroit pick you mentioned. They have a Washington protected first in the future. They have a Milwaukee first rounder that's only top 4 protected. And then I think they have all their own future first. So that's like 4 extra first and all their own. So you could, in theory, still trade like 7 or 8 first. and Fournier is expiring, and they have a couple other contracts they could maybe add. So I still think they're okay in that regard, or they could make a move and still bring in someone if they overpay in terms of first. So yeah, I don't think it's that bad. It's just it's going to be hard to match a higher salary without Barrett's contract. But I think it's still doable. They do have pieces. They could always, if they really wanted to go for it, include like Mitchell Robinson's contract since he's out for the year, or Josh Hart or someone like that could also be flipped again. I know I feel bad for Josh because he just wants to stay in one place, but I still think they could get a big trade done. But I actually think when it comes to Donovan Mitchell in particular, as good as Mitchell is, and he's a fantastic player, I don't like the fit with him and Brunson. So if I was the Knicks, I'd probably save that treasure chest of picks and stuff for more of a forward or a shooting guard or someone that doesn't need to necessarily have the ball all the time, like Brunson and Mitchell both would need the ball more often than not to be their best versions. So I think they're still okay, but I also agree that OG doesn't necessarily put them in the conversation of some of the top tier teams in the East either. But I think they're pretty comfortably. I mean, if you want to put like Boston and whether you want to put Milwaukee in there, I know they've been struggling. Um, and Philly is really good. Uh, I think New York is at worst fourth now after this trade. I think they're going to solidify themselves in that fourth spot.
Do you have, I don't want to put you on the spot, and I honestly, I don't even know a name. So if you don't either, outside of Donovan Mitchell, is there a guy that you think the Knicks should be looking at the deadline? Jeremy Grant, maybe? I don't know.
Well,
No.
it's weird because it, like Barrett, you touched upon this a little bit, but uh, I think he's gotten like super underrated because, um, like people just, I don't know, it's almost like he was a meme, like people love to like make fun of him or whatever. I didn't really get it, but like he's not a terrible player. He's decent. But now you put OG at that three, and you're obviously better defensively. Um, and OG can do a lot of the same things on offense, so I don't think you'd lose a ton there. So then it points to Julius Randle, who's been playing fantastic lately, which we'll get to later, and who's crushing it. But like, uh, I don't know if he's good enough to be a player on a winning team, like a championship team. So do you upgrade the four now that you got your three? I don't know, man. And then they have a bunch of guards still, like DiVincenzo and Grimes, like you mentioned. Um, but so it's hard to think of someone like what position do they go for? Do they go for a center?
I was about to
Hartenstein's
say
been playing.
maybe a center just
Yeah,
because of Robinson being gone for the
yeah.
season. I don't
And
know though.
Hartenstein's been playing awesome, so I don't know if you want to mess with that too much. But then again, like I said, if their ceilings aren't necessarily championship level contenders, even if all those players continue to play well. So I'm trying to think of someone who would become available. Uh, I I wouldn't mind. I think Levine fits a little better than Mitchell does. I mean, obviously Levine isn't as good as Mitchell, but I think he would fit next to Brunson a little better. Um, and you might not have to give up nearly as much as you would. But I don't know if that's the type of player they'd be looking for. Um, so yeah, it's tough. I don't necessarily have a name right off the top of the. Um, I mean, I know they could take chances on other guys, like, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens with the Raptors with Siakam and stuff. If he gets moved, there could be some fallout there. Maybe you can become a third team in that trade and pick up someone that the Raptors don't necessarily want to take on. But now, the more I think about it, to bring this back to a Blazer tie-in, you mentioned Jeremy Grant, but I actually think there's a lot of smoke around Malcolm Brogdon being a good fit for the Knicks now that they traded quickly. I think they still need someone who can handle the ball a little bit when Brunson's on the bench and also play alongside Brunson, not necessarily have to have the ball a lot. So I think Brogdon might be a good fit for them. Um, I don't know how much they'd be willing to give up to get him, but I definitely think we saw those two teams trade last year with Hart going to the Knicks for basically a first round pick. Um, could they do something similar again this year? I think that's something to look out for.
Yeah, because their bench got obviously notably worse with Quickly gone. So I actually don't mind the idea of Brogdon there. That wasn't even something I considered, but yeah, I kind of like that for them. I don't know how interested they would be in Brogdon, but having him as a sixth man in that on that team, and if you need him to play with Brunson, I actually think they could. I actually like that a lot for them. So, you know, Knicks, you want to talk about Brogdon? Similar to the Josh Hart thing.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome. But another thing I wanted to talk about that came from Shams today. that there's currently a growing disconnect between Darvin Ham and the Lakers locker room, stemming from disjointness around rotation and adjustments. Lakers have lost
LeBron
3 in
wants
a
a
row.
coach replaced.
Yeah, like
Thanks,
that's literally what I was thinking of, because obviously they fired David Blatt, got Tyronn Lue after that. He wanted Eric Spoelstra fired when he was in Miami. Yeah, is Darvin Ham going to be fired? And do you think? I never thought I would see that coming, but do you think it's possible?
I do think it's possible. I think they're getting antsy. A lot of people, including their front office, thought that this was going to be a team that was at least a home court advantage team. So that 3-4 seed. Um, they clawed their way through the playoffs as a lower seed last year. But with all their additions, they played really well towards the end of the season after the trade deadline. And I think they thought that was going to continue into this season, and it just hasn't happened for them. So if they fired Vogel, 2 years after he won a title. So I wouldn't put it past them at all to fire Darvin Ham. And yeah, I mean, I don't know if I've paid attention to the Lakers, but I haven't really watched Ham in particular, like his schemes and stuff, to see if that's really the issue or not. But I with a LeBron team, I would never put it past the coach taking the fall for a team underperforming and then hoping another guy comes in. So yeah, I think it's actually pretty likely that they just blame him and move on from him.
Yeah, I saw some Lakers fans lobbying for Doc Rivers to bring
Oh,
him onto
jeez.
the team. So,
Why would anyone lobby for Doc Rivers? I mean, I saw
they're,
it too,
they're like, at
but it
this
doesn't
point,
make
it couldn't be any worse or whatever it may be. But
right.
yeah, they lost their last 3. They're 2-8 in their last 10. It feels like after the in-season tournament championship, the team is just I don't know. It hasn't gone as great
The season
for them.
didn't end with that.
Yeah, it didn't end with that, unfortunately. But yeah, I mean, they're a team that's probably going to be active at the deadline. LeBron's always pushing for, acquisitions at the deadline.
Yeah.
Whether it's Levine or they go get DeMar, who I don't think would be the greatest fit on that team anyway, but if they did, then maybe it's something like that. I don't know. But yeah, the Lakers, it's interesting to see them, because I thought they'd be really good this year as well, the way they played after the deadline. And I thought they had a lot of good role players that they would make it work. But unfortunately, it just hasn't happened for them. But is there.
I
Go
think
ahead.
that's a team too that could be interested in Grant or Brogdon from the Blazers. I still don't
Agreed.
think Grant's getting moved, but I think they could be aggressive for players like that. I think both of them fit on the Lakers really well too, and could just basically be plugged and played and improve their roster pretty quickly. And they might be willing to give up a good draft pick or something to do that, because LeBron can opt out after this season and potentially leave. So do they have to placate him? Do they have to fire him if he wants him fired? Do they have to make trades and give up future picks if they are fearful that if they don't, he's going to bounce? I don't know the answer to that, but it's definitely one of those other teams that's going to be fascinating to watch. I still think the 76ers are the team to watch what they do, if they go for it this year or not, like we've talked about many times. But there's a lot of teams with now less than 5 weeks until the trade deadline that we are going to have to keep an eye on and could be major players here between now and then.
Is one of those teams going to be Brooklyn, who very much intend to still build around Mikal Bridges, despite, I don't want to say he's been like terrible, but he obviously hasn't been as good as last year.
Right.
But they've lost their last 5, and I don't know if building your franchise around Mikal Bridges is the smartest idea. I love Mikal Bridges, and I know you do too, but I don't know if I could ever see him being the number one guy on a championship team. I think we can all agree with that.
Yeah.
Second option would be the ceiling for me, and even that is pushing it. I think third it would be the comfortable one I would see on Mikal. Yeah, so I mean, do you think it's just GM talk, or I mean, I know there's no incentive for them to actually be bad because they don't own their picks or whatever.
Mhm.
So it does make sense to keep them. So I know there's been rumors about them maybe being in on Donovan Mitchell potentially, which I'm not really sure how much that upgrades them, but obviously Mitchell's a good player. I don't know. What are your thoughts on Brooklyn's stage or status right now? Because I wanted to talk about them as well.
I'm big on if you're looking at this from like a team like Portland's perspective, if they want veterans and are gonna overpay to keep their team relevant or back in the playoff race, I say the same thing about like a team like Houston or something. If they uh, want to add another veteran to because they're like hovering at the playoff picture, they want to go for it. So yeah, I would take advantage of that and definitely help them achieve that because, um, yeah, like there's certain teams that just and I don't get it with the Nets because they made the playoffs last year and all that. So you wouldn't think it's like a situation where you have to give up some of your future that you built back after giving it up before. Um, so yeah, I think they are gonna be dumb and, like, try to keep going with it, and, I think the best course of action for them would be to try and keep adding young players. Um, like Cam Thomas, uh, uh, the last few games aside where he hasn't made a single shot, he has shown some promise though, but, like, keep adding that way and just, like, recognize that you're not gonna make a move to make this roster a championship contender right now, so if you try to make moves that thinking that that's your goal, um, I don't think that's the right move, but it sounds like they are pretty serious about not going rebuild route or whatever. Um, and so I think they will trade for some veterans or more veterans than they already have, and just keep trying to figure it out.
Yeah, I think I don't know. I feel like if they had their own picks, they would probably be more. And this again, they could maybe still consider it, but Mikhail,
Yeah,
I would think, would be one of the most sought after players at the deadline if he were on the table. I think they'd get a haul for him just because of how good of a player he is as a 3-and-D wing and the contract alone. That too. So like, I would have to imagine he could go for a lot. But I also understand Brooklyn's side of things where, there's no reason for them to want to be bad to bottom out. They don't get any benefit off of that. That would benefit the Rockets more than it would them, obviously. So Brooklyn's in a tough spot, in my opinion, very tough spot. Obviously, the biggest thing is they gave their whole franchise gave the keys to Kevin Durant and Kyrie, and they ruined a lot of things there. And they have done a decent job of building things back up, but now they're in a tough spot, and I'm curious to see what they do, whether or not they do sell some pieces or buy on some pieces, but. They're in a tough spot, in my opinion.
it's always weird to me when teams end up rebuilding when they make a big trade for someone. And I know it's not always the team's fault, but you saw this with like Houston. Uh, they traded a bunch of picks to get Westbrook and kind of went all in on their roster back then. And then all of a sudden they're trading James Harden and are bottoming him out and really bad. And I guess it works out sometimes if you don't have like pick swaps also. So like every other year, I guess you could be bad and do that. But a team like the Nets, I agree with you. It doesn't make sense for them to tank necessarily. So yeah, just but I don't know what you do either. I would just think that you got some pick assets back and you kind of stockpiled your asset chest a little bit. Um and just be happy that way, and keep adding players that you think could blossom. But yeah, I just don't think they're going to do that.
Yeah, it's gonna be a very interesting deadline as we get closer, but I'm ready to move on
But
to.
what
Or go ahead.
what what do you think? Do you think they're kicking themselves for not trading McHale when they could have gotten a haul for him over the summer?
If we were truly offering the third overall pick, if that is true, and it may not have been, and who knows if it was or not, and maybe you know, but I don't. If we
Hmm.
were truly offering the third overall pick, I think they're insane for not accepting it. I'm just saying. Like, I think they're crazy for not accepting that. And I get, if they did take Scoot, he's had his struggles this year, but who's to say that maybe being in Brooklyn right away, maybe he's really good right away. Who knows? But I think they're insane for not taking that. And if it would have included Simons on top of that, because we would have had to match salary somehow, they're crazy if they didn't
Yeah.
take that. That's all I'll say.
Yeah, I don't think, in my opinion, based on stuff that you know, I believe happened over the summer. I think everything like that was talked about involving the third pick was all BS,
Hmm.
just to show that they were trying, but nothing was available. But I don't think they actually ever offered the third pick in a trade, and everything that said they did was just a smokescreen to try and salvage the public's opinion of their situation and all that. So that's how I believe it went down. That none of these things were um, even close to happening or offered, and they used situations like they maybe tried to get McHale without giving up their pick and Simons, but um, when they tell them it's untouchable, then they can float out a rumor that, oh, we tried to trade everything for him, and they didn't want it because um, they're Brooklyn's not going to come out and say that's not true. Oh, we would have traded McHale for the third pick when it's not available, because then that screws up their relationship with him, right? So they can't say anything about that leak, and they other than like, we don't leak trade information, or just some generic answer, so they can't piss off their players. So yeah, like, I think I believe that the third pick was never actually in play at all, and the Portland Portland Trailblazers had already decided that they were going to keep that pick and hope it blossoms into a star, and they were scared to death to trade it and have someone like Scoot be a star on another team, and then always having that over uh your legacy
Resume.
as
Yeah.
a GM, that you were the one who traded away Scoot and this superstar generational point guard to another team. So I don't think it was ever serious, but Brooklyn probably should have just rebuilt this summer and done stuff like trading McHale, because they could have gotten a lot for him. Still could, but maybe not quite as much.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't want to talk about this too much because obviously thinking about it
the,
just makes me mad because we all know that we got lied
the,
to a lot this summer as Blazers fans. And
the funniest part about all this is someone like Anthony Simons, who I know we both love. He would be absolutely perfect on the Nets,
yeah, he would be.
and would be really good, especially if they kept like McHale and Dorian Finney-Smith and players like that who could be really good defenders around him. Um, I just think he would be awesome on the Nets right now. But I don't think the Blazers are gonna move him at all anytime soon. So
Agreed.
I think they kind of missed their opportunity of doing a McHale for Anthony swap. I think that would have been a good trade, as high as McHale's value was. I think a lot of these teams um, around the league are going to wish they tried to get Anthony maybe before he broke out or whatever, because the guy's a really talented player.
Absolutely. Are you ready to move on to the hoops crushing it?
Yes.
So you kind of said one earlier that I was going to say, so I'll just go ahead and let you talk about him. Go
All
ahead.
right. So my first crushing it for this week was Julius Randle. Last 4 games, he's averaging 35 points per game, almost 10 rebounds, and it's just played really well. And this team, the Knicks, look pretty good since acquiring OG. The offense looked pretty solid, and of course, OG is going to provide a bump on their defense as well.
Real quick, shout out to Emmanuel Quickly for having a good game last night in Toronto, 25 points. So that was just a bonus one that I had. But this team is currently on a 3-game winning streak. Colin Sexton on the Utah Jazz has been pretty solid for them. Had 25 against Detroit the other night. Only 8 points against Dallas, though. But obviously before that, 22, 26, and 20. He's been really solid for the Utah Jazz.
Yeah, I think it's finally starting to play like the 8th pick he was a few years ago. Had a couple of down years, and then since he's been in Utah, he's mostly been coming off the bench until recently, and then I don't know, kind of was an afterthought of that trade now that Markkanen broke out and everything. So it's nice to see him finally putting together a good season.
Who is your next one?
Someone we've mentioned several times, or not several times, but a couple times. Got to mention him again, Terry Rozier, man. The last 3 games, averaging over 31 points per game and over 7 assists, and shooting 53.3% from the field and 46.2% from three. Continues to just put up monster numbers, albeit on a bad Hornets team. But I don't know what the Hornets are going to do with him. If I'm them, I'm taking advantage of his value right now and moving him. A lot of teams could use a scoring guard or some punch off the bench. But he's absolutely proving that he's a capable starting point guard. And that might be enough to make him untradeable in the Hornets' eyes, which I think would be a mistake. But he's been playing fantastic for several weeks now.
Absolutely. That's a good one. My next one is someone we're familiar with. This team is currently on a 4-game winning streak. Shout out to Mr. 3J CJ McCollum, who's been
Oh,
pretty solid for the Pelicans. 24 points the other night against the Minnesota Timberwolves, and then has been putting up, or he had 22 against LA and 22 against Utah, and they're on a 4-game winning streak at the moment. The Pelicans are. So shout out to CJ McCollum. We're all very familiar with him, of course.
yeah, good to see CJ play well. And you know, Zion's been relatively healthy this year. Uh, Not necessarily in terms of like movements and stuff like that, but he's been playing in all the games and hasn't missed a bunch, at least. So good to see them have at least most of their pieces this year. Just kind of see how good that team is, or how good those players all fit together and stuff. They're definitely a team that could make some noise if they figure it out, but they're also a team that feels like they could fall back into the play-in or out of the picture altogether with how many good teams there are.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
All right, so my next one, I'm just gonna do like a kind of a combo because there was a game a couple nights ago between the Kings and the Magic, and there were a lot of huge performances in this one. Malik Monk had 37, but Banchero had 43 points and is averaging 31.8 over his last 4. So he's been playing well. And then Domantas Sabonis, you mentioned, I think that was last week, the Andre Drummond 2020 game. Well, Domantas Sabonis had 22 points, 23 rebounds, and 12 assists. So he had a 2020 triple double. Just an amazing performance from him. And just crazy that all 3 of those stat lines happened in the same game.
Yeah, speaking of 2020 games, of course, Halliburton, which
Oh,
not that I need to keep putting him on here because obviously we know how good he is, but
yeah.
2020 game the other night against the Knicks, I believe it was. So
Hmm.
I think it was like 21 and 23 or something like that. I can't remember, but yeah, Halliburton, just an absolute stud. And again, he don't need to be on here, but when you have a performance like that, I just kind of wanted to throw him on here.
Absolutely. Speaking of people who don't deserve to be on here, but Jokic, he hasn't had like the greatest shooting season, but over his last 3 games, he's shooting 92.9%. Like he's
Wow.
only been it's like 26 to 28 or something.
Holy moly. Jokic
It's
is a
crazy.
different breed, man.
Yeah.
But that was my last one. So, do you have anyone else you want to throw
Yeah, I
in?
just had a couple more real quick. One is Jared Allen.
Oh yeah,
Averaging 21 and 14 recently on 71% shooting from the field. So he's been really dominant on both ends and has been playing well without Mobley in the lineup. And Garland's missed a bunch of games. And that Cavs team is actually playing pretty decent right now with just Allen and Mitchell out of their big four. And then the other guy, this is a first timer uh, for who's crushing it. Um, he came back from injury recently, and the last 3 games is averaging 22.7 points per game and 11.7 rebounds, shooting nearly 60% from the field. And that's the Atlanta Hawks' Jalen Johnson.
oh man, Jalen Johnson. Shout out Jalen Johnson. Yeah, he's
He's
been
been,
pretty
he's been
good this
playing
season.
awesome. That's
Yeah,
someone that a lot of teams are going to wish they would have made a run after because that guy can flat out play and he's been awesome. Despite the Hawks not being great this year, I think they should uh, make moves around keeping him, not give him up in any trade package for like a Siakam or anything.
yeah. Which I assume Toronto is gonna try to pry him away, but I hope
Yeah,
Atlanta, doesn't give him up. Which sounds like Atlanta will be moving Murray potentially. Which we'll see. Obviously, we've done enough trade talk today, but
yeah,
um, are you just ready to move on to prospect watch, or you got anything
sure,
else that you
yeah,
want to add? All right, let's
no,
go.
all right. Well, I don't necessarily have a prospect this week because I went to the Oregon State versus USC game on Saturday and got to
Nice.
see 2 guys we've already mentioned here on the prospect of the week, and that's Isaiah Collier and Bronny James. Got to see them live up
Oh, that's
close.
awesome.
Just yeah, my daughter goes to Oregon State, so we got to sit in the student section. There wasn't a lot of people there because it was break, so there was a lot of people at school at the time. So yeah, it was really cool. Just a few thousand people there to got to sit really close and watch them. Bronny was very impressive, just like athletically, um, like his IQ on the court, just the way he moves. I'm I think I'm a lot higher than a lot of people are on him. He seemed like an athletic specimen. Like he's super quick. His defensive instincts and lateral quickness are off the charts. He can get to the rim and finish. Uh, he's scary pressing in full court or getting out on the fast break. I think his jumper looked pretty fluid. Um, and yeah, his passing. I mean, he's not his dad, but like he definitely had some of that rub off on him. I think he's a very creative and skillful passer. Um, so like all these things, I'm just like, man, this guy's really good. I keep thinking, like we talked about last time we talked about him, um, like if his last name wasn't James or if it wasn't LeBron's kid, if I would think the same of him, or even like know who he is because maybe he's not on USC or in a prominent program or whatever. But yeah, I kept thinking, man, this guy has it all except for one thing, and that's I feel like he's like 6'1", 6'2", and I know he's listed as 6'3". but yeah, he did seem kind of small in terms of height. Um, but I think he can make up for it with all those other things I talked about. Um, but yeah, I don't know if he's going to get kind of stuck as a tweener. He's not quite a point guard, but I don't think he's big enough to necessarily play a lot of other positions. But I think he is athletic and physical enough to maybe make it work at shooting guard. So that's the only real question mark I have. But I was just really impressed by his skill set, and he's only been back for a couple weeks or been cleared to play for a couple weeks, so that made it even more impressive in my mind.
Was LeBron there? Probably not, right?
LeBron wasn't there, unfortunately. The
Uh,
Lakers played that night. I was hoping when I looked at the schedule, I was like, "Oh, please say the Lakers don't play tonight because that would have been awesome."
yeah, I've been
But no,
cool to
LeBron
see
wasn't
him.
there. And
That
then,
sucks.
yeah, like I said, Isaiah Collier also played in that game. He's someone that earlier in the season I had pretty much behind Alex Sarr as my second rated player on my board. I'm not really sure what to do with him. He's been kind of struggling lately, and he actually didn't play like the last 6 minutes or so of this game. It was really weird
Hmm.
just watching him on the bench. He seemed kind of mad that he wasn't going in. He had his hand over his face a lot. He kept shaking his head and stuff. Not really pouting, but like just like you could tell he wasn't happy. And maybe questioning his decision to go to USC or something. But he had a lot of turnovers in the game. A lot of them were because players like couldn't handle passes or whatever. But I saw him make some pretty high level passes to cutting bigs, and they just couldn't finish much, so he didn't have a lot of assists. Um, but yeah, it's like I don't know, it's weird. He seems like he's really good. I feel like he had good ball handling. Watched him warm up. His shot looks really good. Um, and like I said, his passing was good. I think his defense is okay. Um, it just, I don't know. It just doesn't seem to be working right now at USC, and I don't know if that's just a product of that whole team. I mean, they got blown out by an Oregon State team that's not the greatest, doesn't really have a lot of high end talent, but they obviously played a really good game. And yeah, it's just I don't know what's wrong with Collier, or if it's just like he's in the doghouse with his coach or what, but just seems to be like in a little bit of a funk right now.
All unfortunately here for Isaiah Collier, but that's awesome. You got to go to that game. Which, by the way, this last week or so, or because there was a lot of these bowl games on for college football, and as you guys,
Mm.
as you know, and most of you maybe know that I didn't usually ever watch college sports at all, but I did actually spend a lot of time watching some college games. So
Oh, did you?
yeah, so I wonder if I can, transfer that also into college basketball because I
Yeah, you
enjoyed
should.
watching. Obviously you had the playoffs on Monday, which those were, it was
Both the
fun.
games were awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, seeing so yeah, if I could I'm gonna watch the Monday game as well. So yeah, I had a lot of fun watching some college football, not gonna lie. So
Nice.
I wanna try to
Well,
start watching college basketball too and get into college more because it's something
do you
I
like
never really wanted to watch, but now I had a lot of fun.
what about the NCAA tournament?
I never, I always tell myself that like, hey, I'm gonna watch it because it's a lot of fun, but I don't ever do
Really?
it. Yeah, it's weird.
Oh man.
Yeah, I've said like I want to change that really badly because I just for whatever reason don't, and I always tell
Yeah.
myself, March Madness is crazy, it's awesome, but I just don't watch it, and I always tell myself I'm going to, but hopefully this year I
Wow.
can actually do it. So
Yeah. Well, at the very least, fill out a bracket and then like follow along with your
yeah,
bracket and
that
stuff.
could
That's
probably
always
help
fun.
out a lot.
But yeah, it's like it's so weird because college basketball it is some of the most boring basketball to watch. Like a lot of teams, their offense is just atrocious. No one can shoot and all that stuff. So yeah, it can be like really tough to scout and watch games sometimes. However, the first 2 days of the NCAA tournament are like one of my favorite two sports days of the year, and it's just awesome. You got games all day, a lot of them come down to the end. So there's intrigue and intensity and excitement, and just the one and done um, in a basketball setting is just it's crazy and can lead to cool upsets and stuff. So I would definitely force yourself to try and get into it at some point, because I mean it's only 2 days for the first 2 rounds. If you like it, you can watch some of the other rounds. But yeah, those first 2 days, it's so fun, and you have so many games coming down at the end, and it's just like one after another. So I definitely make yourself watch it this year, Brady.
I do know that I did watch one of the Kansas games last year in the NCAA tournament. I know I did that because I remember watching Grady Dick in that tournament. But yeah, but I definitely need to force myself to watch it more.
You didn't watch them the year before when they won it all?
I think I did, because they still had a Baji, right, at that time.
Yeah,
they
had a
I think
Baji.
I'm pretty sure I did. I'm pretty sure
Christian
I did,
Brown, all that. Yeah.
Yeah. So and I remember watching it one year when. I don't know if it was the Final Four or the finals, but I remember this was when Villanova, and I might have told you this before, but this was like when Villanova had Mikal, Brunson, and all of them, and they just absolutely slammed Kansas, like just absolutely killed them. And I don't remember if it was the Final Four or the championship, but I just remember them blowing them out, if I remember correctly. But that was years ago.
I don't think they played Kansas in the championship, so it must have been before that.
Yeah, I could be totally wrong too, but if I remember correctly, I just remember. I could be remembering wrong. I don't know, but
now most of those guys are together in New York.
Yeah, and all they need is Mikal, if they could ever make it happen, but probably won't.
I love Mikal so much in college. Like I didn't think he'd be a star like as good as he was last year, but I just thought he was going to be like the perfect complementary piece. And at the time we had Dame and CJ, and I was like, man, Mikal would be so perfect at the three next to those guys. And yeah, I was behind like Luka, and I like Mo Bamba in that draft too, but like Mikal was like my third. Like that's my guy. Like yeah.
But I think that's gonna do it for us this episode, I believe. So unless you have anything else to add before we sign off here.
No, just hopefully the Blazers get some wins coming up.
Let's get some revenge against Dallas.
We still have 5 more games right on the road trip. So still by the time we talk next week, we'll still not have played another home game. So could be pretty brutal if they continue to play the way they are. And so someone we haven't mentioned this stream yet is DeAndre Ayton, out again.
Yeah, he hasn't been playing at all.
The next game against the Mavericks. So still with that knee tendonitis swelling. Apparently nothing structurally wrong with it, which is a good sign, I guess, but still kind of frustrating that he's been out so long with knee pain and they can't really get it under control.
Yeah, agreed. But I think that's going to do it for us at the end of this one. So thank you guys for watching. As always, peace out. Go Blazers.